Hello and welcome. I want to make a mixed media piece for the Valentines collaboration with MIDI Scenes GB and Crafty YouTubers United. I want to see if I can use this mould, which I got from Temu. It came as a pack of 3 and it's a little bear. It's got a heart on the belly. This one out of the pack is damaged, and I don't know if you can see, but there are lots of bubbles and marks on the inside of the mould. It's all along the arms and, well, basically all over the mould. It does mark the resin, so I only ever use this mould for Aqua Cast, and that's what I'm going to use today. So let's see if I can change this little guy into a bunny. So I want to fill this little mould with the Aqua Cast, and I don't know how much it takes. I'm going to guess, and I'm going to mix up 50 grams, and if that's not enough I will just add a little bit more. I'm putting my cup on the scales and zeroing it, and I'm adding 17 thereabouts. I actually put 18 grams of water in there, and now I'm going to try and add 50 grams of the powder, and then I can mix that and make sure that there are no lumps and that all the powder is incorporated. It's much easier if you add the powder to the water. It mixes so much better. So I'm just pushing the stick against the edge of the cup and scraping the bottom to make sure that there isn't any lumps. And then I'm just going to tap it to release any bubbles, and then I can start to fill my mould. I'll drip a little bit into the ears and the nose first, then I can tap it, add a little bit more, and tap it and squeeze it again just to try and make sure that there aren't any bubbles down there, and I get it to fill all of the spaces. I can top up the mould, and it looks like I might need a little bit more, so I'll scrape the rest out of the pot first. And I found out that I did need a little bit more, even though I got everything out of there I could. But it was literally only about 10 mils, I would have thought, so I just eyeballed that. I added a tiny splash of water to my cup and a spoonful of the powder, and that turned out to be a little too thick, so another splash of the water. It doesn't matter if you make it a little bit runnier than normal, that's fine. It just means that it might need a little more time for it to cure. So I topped up the mould, and that left me with a bit too much, so I just took some more out and gave the mould a little bit of a clean. Anything that you can do to eliminate the mess on the bottom now while it's still wet means that you don't have to sand it too much later. Now I need to leave it to cure. I have this piece of scrap wood, and while I'm waiting for that to dry over there, I'm just going to stain this. So I'm going to use some acrylic paint to do that. I've got some burnt umber, and I'm just going to put a little tiny bit into the bottom of my pot, and I need a brush, and I'm going to use vinegar to apply this. If you use vinegar, it evaporates so much quicker than water. If you use water, your wood fibers can swell and split, and you have to wait a long time for the stain to actually dry out, for your wood to dry out before you can do anything like varnishing or anything like that. So I'm just mixing the acrylic paint in the pot with the white vinegar. Then I can apply this to my wood to stain it. So I'll apply a coat over all of the surface of the wood. And the great thing about using acrylic paint is that you've got such a wide range of colours that are available to you. Should you want it darker, you can let it dry a little bit and then apply another coat, but I think this will be fine for what I'm after. So once I've coated it all, I can set this aside and leave it to dry. Then I can come back once the bare mould is ready to demould. Okay, this is done now, and I'm ready to take it out of the mould. It's not the stretchiest silicone. It is quite thin though, so if you can roll back the bottom edge, it does come off pretty easy, although I look like I'm making a pig's ear of it here. But once I've got my fat fingers in there, I can roll it back and keep hold of that edge while I grab hold of the other side and pull it back. And then you can push against the top, just be careful of the ears, and then roll the thing back. And here it is. Fold your mould back straight away. And he looks really good, but I don't know if you can see on there the marks from the mould. They are quite prominent. It doesn't matter to me. I don't mind having them on the Aqua Cast, but I would on the resin. Unbelievably, I don't have any bubbles in his nose or his ears, which is typical because I now want to actually remove those. So I've just got a, I think it's actually a tool for opening a laptop or something, but I use it for clay and crafting. So I'm going to remove some of the muzzle and also all of the ears. And I will use this tool, I'll use a file and sandpaper, and it's better to do it now whilst it's still wet, because the Aqua Cast is going to take at least another 24 hours, depending on your environment, to carry on curing and drying out. So it's quite soft now. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up while I remove most of the nose and the mouth and the ears. So a point to make is please wear a dust mask if you are doing anything like this. And I carried on doing this, smoothing it down, most of it off camera, and I'll be back to show you what I was aiming for. Okay, I've managed to completely remove the ears. So this is what the little bear looks like now. I actually think he looks a little bit like a penguin. I think if you paint a beak here, you could even just sort of score a line in there to give a beak. But I think you could probably turn this into a penguin. That's not what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to set him aside for a minute. And I want to give this a coat of some white paint. Just some white house paint. And this is what it looks like after it's been stained with the acrylic varnish and the, no, not varnish, acrylic paint and the vinegar. So I've just got some white satin wood and metal paint, and I'm just going to use some of that now and put a coat on here, and then I can set that aside to dry while I work on the other bit. So I'm just going to paint all the sides. I'm not going to bother about the bottom because I will be putting some felt on that. So, and I am covering it, but I needn't bother because I'm actually going to distress this anyway, so it doesn't have to be super neat. Just get a good splod of paint on it. Last bit. The end grain is always so textured. You need a good amount in there. Okay, I'm going to set that aside onto my radiator to dry. And then I need to just go and clean my brush and my hands, and then I'll be back to work on that. Okay, now that I've removed the ears from him, I want to put them back, and I'm going to use some Das Airdry Clay. So I'll grab some from my packet. I don't want to throw him around. So this lump should be enough. I'm just going to condition that with my fingers. Okay, and I've just got a little bit of water here, so I'm just going to put a dab on there, make sure that it is nice and soft and flexible. And then I want to make a ball. Okay, now I want to flatten that into sort of a teardrop shape. Now I'm just going to take a marking tool and I'm going to split the top. And I want to cut that through just a little bit at the top. And again, I'm going to dip my fingers in the water just to smooth the surface out. So I've kind of got a heart now. Whoop, excuse me. And again, I'm going to take the tool and I'm going to bring that mark all the way down. And then smooth that out with my fingers. Right, and I'll have a look at the back as well. And this has obviously picked up a little bit of colour because I can see some blue in it, but that doesn't matter, I'm going to be painting it anyway. So, right, now I can pop these on the top. A pair of really oversized ears. I'm going to use my tool to smooth that over. I drag some of the clay down and smooth it onto the surface. Of the actual piece here. And again, a little bit of water just to make that join a little less rough and smooth out all the bits. Okay, now I need to leave that to dry, so I'm going to stick this on top of my radiator also and wait for this to completely dry. What I could have done, and I didn't feel I needed to because I made the clay particularly wet, but what you could do is have put a blob of glue, and I would have used something like Mod Podge, or could use PVA, bookbinding glue, anything like that. Just put that underneath before you put your ears on. But I'm hoping that this actually will be enough to bind it, because I made it particularly wet before I did. If they fall off, I will glue them back on again, but now leave them to dry. I folded up a cloth and propped that under the ears just to give them some support while he was drying on the radiator. The paint on the wooden base is all dry, and I can use some sandpaper just to distress the edges. Sometimes I will use a metal tool just to scrape some of the paint off, because this paint was particularly well attached. Once I was happy with the way it looked, I could see that the stain that I had put on the edges didn't really show through, but I still had my stain in the cup, so I just used a small brush and added some more on the surface. Now this did mean that it was going to go on top of the paint, but it is a satin paint, so it didn't stain it too much, it just added enough colour. I used the brush to apply it, and where the raw wood is, the stain will stick, and then I could use a baby wipe just to clean off the surface. Then I needed to leave it to dry again before I could apply a couple of coats of acrylic varnish. I'm using the Creole varnish, and I watered it down, and I'm just using my finger to apply. It takes about 15 minutes to dry, so I gave it a couple of coats. Again, I didn't bother to put any on the bottom, that's going to have some felt on it. I gave it 2 coats of the varnish and it's completely dry now. And I have this vinyl decal that I cut out using my Cricut. So I just need to weed it, and it's actually a parchment tool, but it has a very thin pin on the end. So I can just pick out any of the insides of the letters that I don't need. I'm using just some masking tape to transfer the image. I just tore off a strip, and it's just enough to cover the whole thing, and then I will rub it down hard on the back. This is smart vinyl, and that tends to be a little more difficult to remove from the backing sheet. So if I pull the backing sheet back almost on top of itself, almost folding it over, I was able to transfer all the letters onto the masking tape, and then I could place them on top of the wood. I can see through the masking tape to place them, and then I just use the scraper tool to push them down firmly. Peeled off the masking tape, and that's done. The vinyl is permanent, so it doesn't need to be varnished over. Although the Aqua Cast looks white, it isn't. So I'm going to give it a coat of white acrylic paint, and I'm hoping that this will help to fill in some of the micro bubbles that I have here. In fact, I may give it 2 or 3 coats. Okay, I'm just waiting for my rabbit or my bunny to dry. There's the paint on it. I've got some floristry wire, and I'm just going to wrap that around a pen, and then I'm going to hold the wire and bend it back, and then I can hold that against my pen and wrap that part round just to form a heart. Even that out a little bit. Push those together, I think. And then I can twist my wires together. To end up with a heart. And then I'm just going to snip that off. Take it close to the wire. Okay, I'm bringing out the dipping resin that I made in my video where I made the crocus and the snowdrop. It's just some UV resin with a white mica powder and a white nail powder and a drop of clear PVA glue just to help thicken it. So I'm going to try and coat that and let that, oh, it popped. Let's try again. Try and get that coated and set that quickly before it pops. I'm just trying to keep it moving while it's still flowing to make sure that the film doesn't break, and distribute the thickness. You can see some parts of it are thick and some aren't. Okay, just keep that in place now while it sets, and I will be back once that's done. Okay, that's set now. I've got a little bit of some UV resin with some red pigment and glitter in it. So now I'm just going to put some on top of the film and set that. So I am doming the heart, and I'm going to do that on both sides, obviously one at a time. Okay, let me set that under my light. I added a couple of layers to each side until I was happy with how domed it looked, and the last layer I did was just a clear UV resin. Okay, so I made 3 resin dipped hearts, and I'm just going to pinch them together and then twist them around so that they become joined. Create a thickish tail. And that will do. So now I need to finish painting my bunny. Okay, the bunny's had a couple of coats of the white paint now, and I've just mixed up some cadmium red acrylic paint. I'm using a very fine brush. I'm just going to paint the heart that is on the belly. Okay, now I want to make a little bit of pink. Just going to mix that up on my mat. And then I can give him a little bunny nose. It might need to be a bit pinker than that. Just painting a small triangle. Okay. Now I need some pink on the ears. Okay. So I need to leave that to dry now. Okay, my bunny is dry, so I'm going to give him some acrylic varnish coat. And I'm just going to use my finger to smooth this on. I am going to put some eyes in, but I'm waiting until the varnish has completely dried because they are such a small area, and I do want to use some UV gel nail varnish in black so that I have shiny eyes. If it blobs, I want to be able to clean the surface off. So if he's shiny and varnished, I'll be able to do that much easier. So I'm going to give him a couple of coats of this varnish, maybe 3 or 4, and leave him to dry in between each coat, and then I can put the eyes in. So I'll carry on varnishing him. Okay, my bunny is all varnished now, so I just need to give him some eyes. But I also want to, before I just do that, figure out where I'm going to put him, which is about here, because I need to drill a hole. Now I've wound 2 of the stems together to make a thicker stem, and this one is loose, and I'm just going to snip that off there. And I need to measure where I need to cut these. I want the bunny to be holding these like a bunch of balloons, but I want to stick this piece into the actual piece of wood so that it will help to support it. So I think that will actually be long enough. If I cut that there, cut both of them off, and then I can let him hold the balloons and put them in. So I've got to figure out where they're going to go so that I can drill the hole before I attach the rabbit. I think they're going to be there. Can I make a mark? Yep, I can see it there. Let me just get my pair of... So if I make that little hole there, I can take this outside and drill a hole that will allow me to fit that into it. I don't want to do that in my craft room, so I will bring this back once that's been done. In the meantime, let me give this little guy some eyes. Okay, I've got some black gel nail polish, and I've got a dotting tool. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the black polish and let me zoom in. Okay, I'm just going to try and get that in the eye, and I actually want to fill the eyes. Let me pick up a bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to put this under my lamp and cure that. Okay, he's got some little buggy eyes, and I managed to make the hole for this. So I'm going to fix the little balloons in there, and he will sit on the side and it will look like he's holding them. So I'm going to use some B7000 glue, and I'm just going to put a tiny bit in the hole. At least I hope I am. And a little bit on the bottom of there. I'll push those in, and I will put that on the bottom of my little bunny as well. And position him. Now I think I'm going to use a little bit of UV resin just to hold the balloons against his body and make them a little bit more secure. So I'm going to use JDiction's high viscosity. I'm just going to squirt a little bit onto my mat for now, and then I can use a stick, and I will put a blob just against his body and behind the balloon wires, and then I'm going to very quickly cure that. And here he is, all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up and a like, and please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Check out all of the other wonderful contributors in the playlist below in the description box, and thanks for watching. Bye.